Good morning to everybody. I'm at Athikem, very close to the place where I saw my friend the snake. Just a little, about 50 to 100 feet from there. Today is a good day. We have the sun, light streaming in. The rains have subsided and it's beautiful. I can hear the birds sing, and you may also be able to hear it in the background. This morning, I want to talk to you about something again from the Beatitudes. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessedness I spoke to you about earlier. Purity of the heart is something that we can think of today, and seeing God is something that we also need to understand. What is purity of the heart? We all think because we have a brain. If we didn't have a brain, we wouldn't be able to think. The brain is the organ of control. It controls everything. Our thoughts, our words, our deeds, everything is controlled in the brain. And how we think is what decides the ultimate end result of whatever we say, we do, or whatever else. The brain thinks. And how does the brain think? The brain thinks within the realm of its experience, its perception, and based on that, the understanding that is derived from it. So, if I have not seen an elephant, I wouldn't know what an elephant looks like unless somebody describes an elephant to me. If I have not seen a polar bear or seen the photograph of a polar bear, I wouldn't know what a polar bear is. So, it means that our brain is functioning based on the knowledge the brain gets from various surrounding stimulus or stimuli, and from what it sees through the senses or understands through the senses. Without that, the brain wouldn't be able to make out what is going on or what is to be thought of. All these things happen because the brain works through the senses, all the five senses that we have, and of course the extrasensory perception that we speak of. Now, that means the brain is a neutral organ. The brain just absorbs information, understands information, and then to act on it, on the understandings of the brain, we have to, the I, the person, has to decide. For example, now I have come back here to Athikem, despite having that experience with my friend, the snake, and I am not afraid, though I am careful. I don't fear the snake. I don't have to fear the snake. So, it's a decision I have taken. Now, Jesus says, blessed are the pure in heart. Heart is not understood as a physical organ that we all are aware of. Heart is basically considered the seat as the seat of emotions, the seat of how we think, the seat of intent. Content can come from different sources, but it is about intent. Ultimately, the experience of purity is determined by our intent. What is our intent? Is there a motive? Is there an ulterior motive? Motives can always be there. But do we have ulterior motives? This is an important aspect. We call the fox to be a cunning animal. But that is an attribution that we give because we assume that the fox will come and steal our chickens. But is the fox really cunning? The fox is not cunning as we are cunning. The fox has to come, it has to find its dinner or breakfast or lunch or whatever. So it finds out ways and means to get to the food that it requires, and maybe it's our chicken. So in that sense, when we say the fox is a cunning animal, we do not mean that it is an evil animal. But we can be evil, we can be wicked, we can be scheming, we can have ulterior motives. Whatever we are doing, we can have motives for that which are not very good. And that is what Jesus means when he says, blessed are the pure in heart. It doesn't mean lack of knowledge. The problem with Adam and Eve as we read it is not that they didn't have knowledge. Of course they had knowledge. If they had no knowledge, how would they understand there was a tree over there? How would they understand that the fruit was good for sight, good to be eaten, and also desired for wisdom or knowledge or whatever? So they had. That was not the issue. The issue was about intent. They wanted to be like God, forgetting the fact that they are already created in the image of God. So, what is wrong over there? What is wrong is basically that they had a problem with their intent. The intent was ulterior. Whenever we do things, whenever we act on things, our thoughts can be diverse based on the kind of experiences we had, the knowledge we have. The wider the understanding, the greater the ability to think and reach decisions. But issues that result in impurity are not based on knowledge. Of course, they are based on knowledge in that sense, but not based on the knowledge you have, but on the intent I have or you have. So, if the intent is not right, if the intent is ulterior, if the intent is to do something that is against the value of life, if the intent is to negate the goodness of creation as God has created it, definitely then there is lack of purity. Today, nations are warring with each other. People are trying to subjugate each other. People are trying to destroy each other. Even in small areas, we see that based on caste, based on religion, based on race, all these things are happening. Why would that happen? Because there is no purity of the heart. If there is purity of the heart, as Jesus meant it, definitely I would not be wanting to survive at the cost of another. I would not be wanting to destroy somebody else for me to survive. That is real. And Jesus says, if your intent is not right, if there are motives that are not right, there is no truth in it, because the truth is based on what we see, and what we attribute as truth will be based on our conscience, and our conscience is as good as we think about it. So, blessed are the pure in heart. Now, seeing God, we can't even look at the sun. How can we look at God in that sense, physically? Seeing God doesn't mean that you physically see God in that sense. We cannot. He's the creator. You cannot see God physically as we see it. But you can see the impressions of God in and around you. You can see God in the plants, in the trees. Not that I'm telling you to worship somebody or something, but I'm saying that you can see the impression, the image of God in everything around us. That is one way of seeing God. The second way of seeing God is being aware of His presence with you, in you, and around you. God is in control. To see God means to know and realize that God is in control and He is around you, with you, in you, about you. That's what the psalmist says. If I go to the depth of the ocean, you are there. And that consciousness of the presence of God, that God is with me, around me, in me, all these places. That's what Paul also says, you are the temple of the living God. So, to be aware of God, to be aware of God's image, to be aware that God is always there, enables the inner presence to be coming to our consciousness. You don't have to physically see God to be aware of God. So, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. I hope we can experience this, God's presence. I hope we can come to an understanding that if we have purity of the heart, God can be part of us. Because God is not away. God cannot live in impurity. God cannot exist in impurity. God cannot exist where there is no purity. And that is exactly what we need to understand. If we need to be aware, if we need to have clarity, if we need to have the clear water experience of God in us, that's what Jesus says, out of you shall flow living water. If living water has to flow from us, then there has to be purity of intent and, of course, purity of content that comes out of it. We may think many things. Thoughts can come at random in different ways, but ultimately it is how we act on it that makes the difference. But we also have to be aware of how we think. May God bless us all to have this experience of purity as God wants it. God bless you. Thank you so much.